and welcome to the CapLander Podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned professional, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping the industry. Featuring expert guests and deep discussions, CapLander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody. Hi, Jack.
Hi.
Jack, we're glad to have you. Where are you sitting today?
I am actually sitting in wonderful Tempe, Arizona, and it's about 15 degrees cooler than normal, so it's about 75 degrees and gorgeous. So a little bit of spring weather here, or winter weather, I should say, for Tempe.
Not the sweater weather you're still having, Morgan. All right, well, let's jump in. Jack, you are really a CEO par excellence. You've been in this industry, the life science industry, pretty much your whole career, and you've been both on the large company side and the private company side. And I think right now, I mean, there's been so much in the news and really in the media about what's going on in the private markets and big companies. So I don't know, what's your take on things today, sitting from where you are as a CEO, as well as someone who has optics from a career of both sides of the house?
Yeah, it's hard to believe, 35 plus years in med tech, but I've been through the ups and downs. And you know what? Maybe it feels like a little bit of a down right now, but I can tell you it's going to rebound again, and you have to just be patient.
I love that, Morgan. We always say long game, big picture. I know that Jack, you said you listened to some of the other CapLander podcasts, and I swear it comes up every time. And Morgan, I don't know if you have your little bingo card, but the 30 some odd years, that's Jack and I are both going to say.
Only counts if you say back in the day. That is the thing. That's the only one. It doesn't matter unless you get the exact words.
Morgan, we say back in the day because there was a back in the day. You don't say it because you're living it right now. You're living your day.
2 X's down. One is back in the day, and the second is the explanation of why back in the day works. So I'm a twofer right now.
You remember a back in the day too, don't you?
Absolutely. Back in the day, things were a lot different.
We poked around your bio on the website. We poked around your LinkedIn. We did as much grade A stalking that we could do, but it looked like you were in the military years and years and years ago. And my question is, you hear a lot of people who go into the military and they learn a lot about leadership. Did that hold true for you? Were there things about that really set you up for being a CEO?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and I tell everyone the 4 years in the military were a great 4 years. Loved it. Great experience.
Of the military?
Army. Yeah, I was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, where Norm Schwarzkopf was the base commander and Colin Powell was second in charge. So they kind of ran the show, and they were my examples, frankly, of leadership in my first few years in the late 80s in the military. And I will say those 4 years had a tremendous impact on who I am as a leader today. Yeah.
A lot of discipline.
I spent 10 years in the defense business when I worked for TRW, and while TRW, now it's TRW Northrop Grumman, but that's how far back I go when it was just TRW, and I was in DC. And that's really the foundation for the comp structures that we set up in terms of looking at all the base salary, the current bonus, target bonus, total cash, because the tables that we use at Thelander are the same as what I used when I worked for TRW, and we had a lot of protocol around the defense business.
Interesting. Yeah.
I will say the days of when they used to sort of secretly tell me our preference is that you wear a skirt to meetings and not a pair of pants. So I think we have progressed a little bit since there.
I'll tell you a funny story. When I worked for Abbott, this was like 1988, you wore a white dress shirt with a tie. That's what everybody wore, and a suit. So, boy, things have definitely changed from those days back then when, it was a different world.
What made you want to make the switch from being at a large corporation to running privately held medical device or life science companies?
Yeah, how did you know you had the entrepreneurial spirit? Like, did you always have it? Or
at J&J, I was there at a great time. I was running their vascular business, which was just growing at 25, 30% a year. When I first started, we were about a 50, $60 million company. When I left, it was over a $500 million. This was within about a 10-year period. I mean, it was a really great time. But during that time, we did some acquisitions of companies, and I had a chance to get to know some of the CEOs at these smaller companies. And I was like, boy, it's really interesting what they're doing and the control that they have, which you don't have at a big corporation. Even if you are in charge, you're really not in charge. There's always there's so many layers and bureaucracy. And I got to know a couple of these CEOs and just really liked what they had to say. And at the time, I was in my early 40s, and I thought, you know what? If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I took a little bit of risk. My kids were in high school at the time, but I thought, hey, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, I'll go back to a big company. Well, I think the rest of the story is written exactly. I ended up going to a small company based out of Australia in the neurotology space. I had a non-compete for a couple of years in cardiovascular. Really enjoyed it. Learned a whole new field dealing with tinnitus, which is a pretty significant problem. And then I went back and went to work for a company called Invitech, which had the second drug-coated balloon to market, and we were acquired by Medtronic in 2010. Got a taste of being acquired, which was a lot of fun. I spent my time there at Medtronic. I had a 2-year requirement to stay, and I did. And
what was the first CEO gig for you?
yeah, so that was when I left J&J and I went to a company called Neuromonics. So that's really where it kind of started, 2006. And then that kind of springboarded. And, that first one, you've never done this before. Somebody's taken a chance on you. I learned a lot through it, made a lot of mistakes. But at the same time, it really allowed me to do a lot of other things once I took that chance and risk. And frankly, the investors and venture capital saw, hey, this guy is willing to put it all out there.
Because that happens. You hear over and over that the VCs want to bet on a founder and the CEO. It's the team, but it's the initial team. And once you've had success and you have the confidence and trust of the VCs, for all the challenges in fundraising, which is why you probably say this, good people get funded.
It is all about the team. If I've learned one thing from the Army, when I mentioned, Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell, it's about people. Yes, you need technology, but they always say, I'll take a great team with mediocre technology versus the other way around. The company I'm with today, the CEO of Nectero, I'm working with what I'll say, greatest people, greatest team I've ever worked with. Just super.
Of all the distilling down from, I couldn't agree also, by the way, and I give Morgan a lot of credit for this because at Thelander, we always had great data. And I would say arguably our technology was like modest at best. And I always believed that the quality of our data, that would stand the test of time. And now because of Morgan coming on and her optics as more of a, I don't even know what Morgan are you? You're not a millennial. What are you?
I think I'm somewhere in there. I'm not going to age myself yet.
Somewhere at the dirty 30 level. But you really came in and you were like, we do have all this great data, but now we have to layer in the technology and our platform and all these upgrades that we've been doing. But I was all about the quality of the data, just like you're talking about the quality of the team. And I had that too. When you come from that traditional background, you see what makes success. And then if you're smart, when you move into the innovative lane, you take those pieces and you make your own recipe.
Yeah, I was just going to add too, you're able to, for me with 30 years plus, I've been able to pull some of the best people over the course of my career back or utilize their relationships to grab other. Every person we've hired here, there's a connection. It's such a different world than early in your career where, you're hiring through a recruiter, you're hoping that they're going to work out. It's just, you really get the benefit of all the experience.
Well, yeah. Like what they say that's a lot about college, right? And I think I saw something. You are a Michigan alumni for your MBA, which is near and dear to
We're a big Go Blue family.
We are. I want to be accurate. I did coursework at Michigan. Never finished my MBA, but I did do some coursework there. I'm one of those folks that really kind of OJT. Abbott was a big on-the-job training company, and actually J&J is too. So I kind of learned it through the school of hard knocks. I'll say I was a poli-sci major, believe it or not.
I
And now I'm
actually saw
running.
that because I was poli-sci and legal studies as undergraduate, which
Oh,
I think has zero to do. I had every
yeah.
single OJT except my on-the-job training is Jody Thelander training. So I'm OJTT.
Well, you talk about the curating of a team because the Thelander team really makes me laugh because, of course, Morgan, anybody who worked for Thelander had some kind of connection in a way, in a personal way. And even more so today, Morgan, of course, but then the other guy on our team, Mac, his mom was one of my original advisors. It was from a music play group where Morgan and Mac, when they were like 2 years old, were in. And then Mac's brother, Cameron, now works for us. And it's pretty much a team, it's a curated team where we pick based on the mix of the right personalities and not their credentials on paper. So you talk about not getting your MBA because you don't need it. I mean, I don't even know the education of Mac or Cam, or I mean, no, Morgan, I know your education because I paid for it. So, but you're right. Is that at
Yeah.
a certain point you get to be as an entrepreneur to be very innovative and only it's an eat or be eaten and only the strong survive. And you learned this in the military.
Yeah, you know what? I'll say something that you guys are sort of hitting on, but I look for in people, and it's my MO is I look for people that are very inquisitive and want to learn. And frankly, the poli sci liberal arts background, you meet a lot of them that are willing to learn. And I have 5 PhDs that work for me, and they all say you're the most technical, non-technical person we've ever met. I am willing to roll up the sleeves and dig it and learn. And I see that about you guys too, that you know what, if you're willing to learn and dig it, you can really get far on the technical side.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
been your biggest surprise as a leader in a company, in the private companies, from, where you are today, from where you came from, right? You're a seasoned CEO. And I know, that we were supposed to have you on a webinar actually, and you had a conflict, and then you enlisted one of your other CEO colleagues who was like, oh, anything that Jack says, I'm doing that because he's the guy. So you've obviously learned things and endeared the confidence of your colleagues. But what would you say that like those biggest lessons where you know how to zig and zag now are?
There are so many little tidbits, but I think I try to really listen and understand what's going on and get to know people, the team I work with, and just getting everybody focused and going in the same direction. There's so many things over the years I've learned as a leader, but getting them all going in the right direction and working together, you just can't put enough weight on it.
Yeah. I just finished, and I think I've mentioned this with Jody, but I finished the Nike memoir for the founder. And his
Mhm.
team was, and he says this in the book, he's like, if you would have seen us, we would have looked like the most eclectic people of all time and ranging in entirely different shapes and sizes. One guy's in a wheelchair and one guy's like 400 pounds. And regardless, I mean, before Nike went public, they went from being worried about money every single day to every single person who is a part of the leadership team being worth millions and millions of dollars. And it's exactly what you're saying. People who came from PricewaterhouseCooper, people who were just track stars or coaches. And the reality is exactly what you're saying is when you have somebody who's willing to dig in and willing to learn and willing to do the work, it can really make up for the difference in those technical skills or just knowing how to code or knowing how to do something.
Yeah, and I think about you guys that I see is you guys have a common vision. And I really believe that companies that can communicate and
Totally.
develop a common vision is what really drives long-term success. And at Nectero, the other company I'm chairman of the board of, they're very focused on a mission, and it really has to do with patients and physicians and really making a difference in the world. And I always sit down and really talk to them about what is the vision of the company and what are we trying to do here.
Being
And
aligned.
frankly, it makes it real personal.
It also sounds like, though, and first of all, I agree because one thing is that I always say to Morgan, laundry, no, I can't cook for shit, but I know how to do this business because I've always had a clear mindset on how Thelander fits in, where the data was, the private capital markets, and all of that. And conversely, what you're saying is what I think, we've learned as we get more seasoned is how to listen to what your team has, what they're seeing and how they might be able to contribute. And as we get older, we get less sure and say, great, we know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. So we want to listen to the people on our team who we value their insights.
Yeah. Yeah. And that willingness to take risk And, it does get a little harder as you get older. You're like putting yourself out there. But I think that's how you continue to grow and learn, is by constantly doing new things. And I've been a medical device person my whole career. This is the first time, although I'm involved in a medical company that has a device, we're actually a drug. We're going through a drug approval process. I learn stuff every day because it's just a totally different.
I saw that. I was almost going to say, I know your history is medical device, but now really it's more biotech. And, a lot of times we look at things as life science. So, yeah, that's really incredible. And also the fact that you're not an MD or you don't have that background is really impressive.
Yeah, I will say I'm very happy, and it was a huge change for me. I wasn't sure I was even capable of doing this, making the switch to biotech so late in my career. But it's been one of the best decisions of my career to really do something different and see that, hey, you know what? If you're a successful leader in one area, you can be a successful leader in another. You got to be willing to roll up the sleeves, hire the right people, learn. But boy, it's reinvigorated my career. And certainly something that I'm just so glad that I made the decision to take on this role.
And you have a lot of impressive investors too. I mean, I think Norwest is one of your investors too. So how do you utilize such a prominent venture firm to be kind of maybe a secret weapon in some ways, or really be a resource for you or an advisor?
Yeah, it's been really good to have not only Norwest, but we have several other big investors and strategics, two big strategics between the two companies I'm involved with. They have a lot of assets and support and resources that you just don't have as a small company. I think last year was probably my most exciting year, both personally and professionally. To see two companies raise almost $200 million in cash was just incredible. And now they're both one's in an IDE study, the other's in an IND study to get approval. Personally, I ended up out of the blue. I'm a huge Dodger fan. My father, who has passed, was a big Brooklyn Dodgers fan. I ended up getting tickets and going to Game 5 of the World Series and watching the Dodgers win, come back.
Jack, see, this is what makes you just such a baller leader, is that you get that. That's always been the crux of it, is that it is holistic, and how you do anything is how you do everything.
Bingo.
And it's a mantra.
There you go. My card's dark.
Your bingo card, I filled one of my notches. And I love that you don't hesitate to say that the personal and professional, it's all intertwined, and one begets the other. You're happy in one area and you're happy as a leader, and you fulfill the different buckets that you care about.
You got to have balance. And yes, my team will tell you, I go hard. My wife will tell you, I put everything into Nectero, but at the same time, just a little tidbit, I have 15 grandchildren.
15,
yeah.
15?
Find on the internet. I'm surprised. Yeah, I have 15 grandkids. And then the other thing is I just finished running the Boston Marathon.
I remember the marathon part. I was going to get to that because that's sort of maybe where we should wind up. So, because really the marathon to me is the crux of where you are the guy from the start of your career in the military and all the different angles that you've done. You are the go the distance. And you started with it, like the fact that you've been through it, you stay steady. I'm sure there were points along in the marathon where you were like, what am I doing?
I think everybody hits that spot in a marathon where you're like, am I going to really get this done today? Because it is long and takes incredible discipline. But I don't know if I told you guys, but I didn't run for 30 years. I did it in the Army and then stopped running.
That's
and then
enough for me. I'm good.
Yeah, a colleague of mine was going to run a half marathon, and he asked everybody in the company, and everyone said no. And I go, okay, well, I'll try it. I don't know if I can even do it. So I ran a mile, I ran 2 miles, I ran a few more, and I ended up going to Savannah for my first marathon. Ran it in a nor'easter. The wind chills were like in the upper 20s. It was brutal, 5 inches of rain, 30-mile-an-hour winds. Finished it, and then ended up saying, I'm going to do one more in nice weather. So I went to Arizona, where Nectero is, and ran a half marathon. And I was just about to turn 60, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to run a marathon for my 60th birthday. Ran it, horrible experience, I will tell you. but I doubled down. I was like, I'm going to run another one. I'm going to do it better. And the second one, I qualified for the Boston Marathon. So it
Good
was
for
just,
you.
it's been a lot of fun. I credit my parents completely. I had no idea that they had those kind of genes, but I really believe it was the genes and a little bit of, certainly I had to do some training, but I'll say, I know talking to some of my fellow runners now that it doesn't happen very often that you pick it up at age 60.
No, that's probably why you were so good at it, because you weren't fatigued.
That's all right. 30 years on the couch. That's right. 30 years on the couch has paid off.
I have two questions for you. One, which job is harder, being a CEO or a grandfather to 15 grandkids?
Being a grandfather is the best because I don't have the responsibilities as a parent. So you're always
That's
giving
fun.
them back. So yeah, I just love, it's a little crazy when we all get together. In fact, we're going to be at a beach house together this summer there'll be probably 25 of us in a house for a week. So I'll probably need a vacation after that vacation.
Right.
And they're all
That's
between
fun.
the ages of like 2 and 11.
Oh my
So
God.
a busy age. And then I think the CEO thing is just very gratifying to see the technology, the company. You talk about a marathon. I got involved with the technology in 2009. So it's been 16 years. So truly a marathon to get to where we are doing a pivotal study in the United States now with this technology.
Well, I'm going to wind up with that because the perfect opportunity is that you're doing, two parts here that work in tandem. One, you are raising the next generation for the world in terms of, medical device and life sciences, and that's very satisfying. And you're doing that hand in hand as a leader who's had, starting from the military and, going all the way through to where you are now, from public company to private company, and raising capital, and not least of which you are raising grandchildren with generational support. And I think on every podcast everyone with whom we've engaged here has had a story about how their parents and their grandparents have been so meaningful. I would say that this industry is lucky to have you. We are lucky to have you as a colleague. Your family is very lucky to have you as a grandparent and someone who is, I'm sure, contributing on so many levels. So thank you for joining us today. Jack, impressive, and you made us really laugh.
Pleasure to spend time with you guys. I always enjoy getting together with you guys. So thanks for everything you guys are doing, because you do make things easier for us, frankly, as executives, as CEOs, with the information and the commentary that you guys provide of what's going on in the medtech world.
Running commentary. And Morgan, no ideas as I turn 60 this year that I'm going to run a marathon. Life is a marathon, so that's enough for me.
Oh, you got it. I tell everyone, you can do it. You can.
I'm passing
Cody's
on
like, I'm
that.
good. No, I'm
I'm
good.
good.
Every
Going back to the
mile.
couch.
If I'm making money, that's different. Then maybe I'd consider it.
All
Thanks,
right, well,
Jack. Bye,
thank
Jody.
you.
Thanks so much.